to welcome you back to our sermon series in faith, where each week we're looking at a new faith tradition. And the idea behind this series is this premise that we can engage people of other faiths and not discount what they believe or try to convert them to Christianity, but instead to open ourselves up and to maybe learn something new, learn a new way to connect with God, or a new way to understand God, or a new tradition that will help us draw closer to God. And so last week, we looked at Judaism, the week before that we looked at Islam, and this week you can tell we're kind of in a different territory. It's familiar, and the language that you'll hear will be foreign, and that will be a little bit uncomfortable at times. But I'd like to welcome you to the Vedanta Center of Atlanta, where Brother Shankara graciously met with me before and has met with me again today.
The proper name for Hinduism is Sanatana Dharma, which means the eternal or perennial philosophy, perennial religion. Hinduism was an invention, the name Hinduism was an invention of the British for all of the various ways that the divine is celebrated in India, with the idea that there's one God which was revealed to the forest sages called rishis. They expressed this in very short bursts of language called shlokas that came down over the millennia to us as the Vedas and the Upanishads. And in the 19th century, Vedanta was revivified by Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna was a saint in Bengal. He worshipped at a temple near Calcutta, and revivified by re-experiencing, by reliving all of the great teachings of the Vedas, the Upanishads. So Gandhi said, if you want to know the Vedas, look to the life of Sri Ramakrishna. Vedanta is a system of practices that lead you to a personal realization of the divine. We are one with God. That's the message of Vedanta, that your true nature is divine.
As we know it today, is hard for Westerners to understand. It's not just a language thing, it's the way it's created. There's not creeds in Hinduism like we have in Christianity, creeds or formulas that make it easy to say who is in or who's out. Instead, it's an open path. It's a recognition that all paths that are striving to God have the ability to meet God. Hinduism is a complex system. It's theological, and it's sociological, and it's philosophical, and at the same time it's a structure for culture and for society and for religious norms. It's a way of life, if you will. Hinduism is open and it's tolerant. And it's the third largest religion in the world, and the oldest at that. I want to spend just a few minutes talking about beliefs in Hinduism. And I know it seems foreign, and I've said it several times, but I think it's important that we have an idea of what some of these core understandings are. First, I think it's important that we need to recognize that Hinduism is monotheistic. I remember the first time I heard that, I had that, what are you talking about, Willis, kind of event in my life. Because we all know the images. We've heard about the 33 million gods, and we wonder how can there be 33 million gods and they only worship one God? Like, come on, we all know that 33 million is bigger than one. So how can that be? But I think we're thinking about it in the wrong way. Those 33 million gods are not gods like with a capital G. They're more like aspects or attributes of the one true God. And while Christians and Muslims and Jews, for that matter, we view God more in the form of man, Hindus believe God is in all things. Hinduism is about the search for the one true God, the God above all, the all-powerful being. But they believe that not all men can get to God on their own, that sometimes they need to focus on one aspect in order to get there. And we might view this as multiplicity, this idea that, we've taken one big great thing and broke it down to a bunch of little pieces, like we've sent God to some sort of holy chop shop and made one big God into a bunch of small, lesser, weaker less divine, less holy, less transcendent. But it's not about that. It's about making God approachable and accessible. And of course, we as Christians have an answer to that. We understand that Jesus is the way that we are able to access God. But I appreciate how big this makes God. 33 million different attributes is a lot of ways to understand and to worship God. And it would be easy for you to say that you can just pick your favorite attribute or your favorite aspect and only worship that one part, only connect with that one part of God. Like only eating the dessert off the plate and avoiding all the broccoli. But if we're honest, we'll admit that we do that too. That there are parts of God that we are connected to, that we're drawn to. Maybe it's compassion or mercy or justice or love or grace. We do that. We connect with a part of God, and that's the part that we value the most. And you might be wondering about the statues and the gods that Hindus will worship before, and are thinking clearly they're not worshiping God if they're looking at pagan idols in their homes, or that they're understanding worship in a different way. But really what they're understanding are manifestations of the one God. They're ways, like stories, to connect with God. Like in the Orthodox Christian churches, they use icons in the same way. They help believers connect with God. So I asked Brother Shankara to talk a little about the deities that they have here at the Vedanta Center.
The shrine, as you'll notice, is very simple. We believe that simplicity is an element of the divine practice. That great complexity only leads to misunderstanding. So all of these things that you see are meant to simply communicate some aspect of the divine presence and of the divine practice that leads to a realization of that divine presence.